So today we're going to be talking about the usually the first question in almost any interview. Walk me through your resume or tell me about yourself. And just a little bit about me. I have been coaching for about a little more than 8 years. And my wife and I actually run our own admissions consultancy. And we've had incredible success, which is we're very proud of. 95% of people who have been full service clients have gotten into top 20 programs globally. Quite experienced not only with M7 and US schools, but also many of the international, especially the European schools. And I've worked with a ton of international clients. So I'm happy to work with any of you. But I have a lot of experience. If you are an international client, I have a bit of a specialization there. I am actually living abroad, so I'm actually living internationally at the moment. And since 2010, been to a bunch of countries and currently speaking to you now from Albania, which is an amazing country, and going to Istanbul, Turkey in just about a week, actually. So for the next event, you'll see me in Istanbul, which I'm really excited about. I don't know if anyone has been there or if anyone is from there right now. So going on, for our agenda, I'm going to first get into just understanding these questions. What is the meaning? Why are they asking these? And then I'm going to go through several frameworks to help you figure out good ways to organize your answers. And different approaches will work for different situations. You will want to just play with them and see what feels best for you. Go through a lot of do's and don'ts. There are a lot of those. And actually, I've created a couple imaginary candidates today, thanks to the magic of ChatGPT. So we're going to use them as examples. And as we go through each framework, I'm going to have an example answer for each of these two candidates. And after that, we'll have a Q&A session, any questions you might have. And finally, as you might have seen in the event information, I'm going to be giving away a 1-hour interview prep session with me at the end of the event. So I will choose that at the very end. So let's go on from there. Actually, I want to ask first let me get some of your input too. So why do people think these questions matter? Why are they important, or do you think they are important? You can put in the chat, or if you want to jump off mic. I want to add some interactivity when we can. So anyone, why do you think these questions are important? Anyone be brave? Sanity check. Okay. They set the tone. Yeah. You get to take wherever you will rather than interview steering you. Yes, absolutely. That's definitely a key point we're going to talk about. Anything else? All right, well, let's go on then. Yes, you absolutely got the key point there, Alexander. Yes, these are the only questions that you can, with a 95% likelihood, plan carefully ahead, and the question will be answered and you will get to deliver your planned answer. After this question, it depends entirely on the interviewer. They could go a completely different direction than you are really expecting. They might just start going with follow-up questions and not even ask all of the kind of expected questions. It really depends on the school, and not only that, it depends on the interviewer. For the same school, I've seen extremely different directions that some interviewers have gone, but you almost always get this question. So as Alexander said, it does give you the opportunity to choose exactly what you want to present about yourself and your background and your candidacy. And it will, as Alexander put, steer the interviewer from this point. think of it as kind of planting seeds. So you want to choose what you're going to talk about when answering these questions very carefully, to pick things that you are the most excited to talk about in the interview. These should be the issues that you hope the interviewer will ask you lots of follow-up questions. So you will then kind of put these out there, not in a long format at all, but you're just kind of highlighting certain things. And it becomes very likely that the interviewer will latch on to some of those things either immediately after the answer or later in the later in the interview, excuse me. And this kind of helps you guide it from the beginning. As you're going to see, one of the things I do like to do is kind of end by teasing your goal and why you're kind of picking that school. And when you do that, it further steers it, right? The natural follow-up is then, oh, tell me about your goals. And you can kind of get the progression going very naturally that way. So some more reasons that the kind of purpose of this question, they're interested in learning about you and your background and kind of the core motivations, what drives you. It's the beginning. You can't say a lot about your compatibility with the program at this point, but when you're thinking about each program, you may change this answer a little bit to highlight different aspects of your candidacy that align better with different schools. To be clear, be authentic. So don't force anything into this this answer. Only include things that are real, that you do want to talk about. If they happen to connect to different schools' desires, then you can kind of customize it in that way. Your goal really is to deliver a concise but really well-structured answer that's going to highlight key strengths, experiences, motivations, while still aligning with each specific program's structure and your goals. And by the end of it, you hope that you've left a really strong first impression. As you know, first impressions are formed extremely quickly. And this is really going to set a lot of what's going to happen and give them their initial kind of feel for you. And what do you think are some of the common issues that people have in answering these? What are some difficulties you think that people tend to have? Anyone want to jump in or put some answers in the chat? Be brave. I'm really hoping to not just talk the entire time. Differentiate from others. You feel they have trouble differentiating from others, Wan Ying? Okay. Rambling, yes, absolutely. Not connected to the school, not connected to your job opportunity, not getting to know you. I'm talking about common like problems in this case, beyond the written application. Okay, that's a positive there that you're talking about, Sarosh. Sorry, whoops. There we go. Okay. You've definitely caught some of the common problems, and one is that you are extremely short. Some people talk for 30 seconds and kind of end, and the interviewer is often just, oh, okay, I was really expecting a lot more than that. On the other side, some people go on for, I've seen literally 10, 15 minutes. I've done a mock interview and the applicant has just gone on and on and on. And finally I've had to say, oh, okay, let's stop and kind of go from there. If you are sometimes completely broad, you're kind of all over the place. Other times you are, kind of really too narrow. The biggest mistake that you do see extremely often, especially when I first do mock interviews with many candidates, they, especially in answering walk me through your resume, if I'm looking at that resume, I can just see them literally, okay, they're almost repeating each point as they go through. And that is the kind of death knell. That's the guarantee that you're going to really bore your interviewer. And what's worse, you're not helping them. You're not giving them any new information beyond what they've already seen. And As you know, many of your interviews will be blind, and so the interviewer only has the resume. So if you are just repeating what's there, you're really wasting a lot of opportunity. You can be really unclear, you can be unstructured, you can be just say one thing and you're talking about your childhood, and then you jump to the present and you jump back, and it's just kind of all over the place. Failing to connect your answer to your goals. In the end, you are going to do an MBA for a very particular reason, right? You are trying to achieve those short and long-term goals. So if you talk about things that are really disconnected from what you are going to eventually get to when you are discussing your goals, it doesn't make sense, right? You're not really supporting your own argument. And not showcasing alignment with school values. This might mean you start talking about things that are severely kind of anti their desires. So, most schools these days want a very collaborative kind of approach. And if you start talking about all of these really independent things you've done, how much you love working alone, you prefer not to be dealing with other people, not good, right? Boring. This is another really, really common problem. You just kind of drone on. There's no even personality in your voice. You're just speaking like a robot, just kind of going blah, 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 blah. And the interviewer is absolutely asleep. So in your framework, whichever framework you choose, your goals are to really grab the interviewer's attention and make them interested in you and your life, and want them to start really pulling for you to succeed, right? They want to start feeling like, yes, this is a person who I could see as my classmate if this is a alumni or current student. They want to feel they like you. This actually is a really important aspect that isn't talked about as much. You focus a lot on, how am I going to answer these questions? Am I going to give this great behavioral answer? But in the end, if you don't have any rapport with the interviewer, if they feel friction and they don't really like that much about you, that itself can be a problem. It shouldn't be a popularity contest, but to some degree, you definitely want to try and engage and build that rapport and build as quick and strong a relationship with the interviewer as you can. Beyond that, you are trying to differentiate yourself up front, right? You're trying to say, what have you been through, maybe touching on some of what is unique about you, what you have learned about yourself to this point, and then beginning to connect that to where you're trying to go, excuse me. You want to really be authentic. You'll hear every school, if you go to info sessions, talk to anyone, again and again and again, say, don't try and be what you think we want you to be. Be yourself. Show us your best self, right? Really let us see what's unique, what's amazing, what are the special things that you're going to bring to the program, and how is the program going to benefit you. And in the end, as I was kind of alluding to earlier on, it's you want to kind of end in some strong fashion. And I like always the idea of just planting that bridge to the natural next, which, as I mentioned, my favorite is just kind of hitting on the goals. And that just makes a very, very natural flow from that point. So we've talked about some of the do's. As I said, be concise, stay on point, be positive. This is very, very important. Just smile, let your personality show. You're going to be nervous at the beginning. They completely understand that. And I didn't highlight this earlier, but you might have seen on the slide. Another reason they're asking this is to break the ice, right? They want to give you an opportunity to talk a bit, start calming down, start relaxing. So when you're talking about really positive things, just let all of that enthusiasm come out. Even force yourself to smile early on. Once you do that, it does start kind of energizing you and bringing you out of your shell. And when you smile, they naturally kind of respond in the same way. Talking about some don'ts. Oops, excuse me, sorry. As we said, don't want to ramble. Using jargon. This is something that's really important that many people don't really kind of think about. You are in your industry. In your industry, you get stuck thinking everyone around you understands exactly what you're talking about, right? You can use acronyms, you can use all kinds of industry-specific jargon, but when you say that, an average person or somebody who is not at all in your industry has no idea what you are talking about. So make sure whatever you're saying is easy for anyone to understand. You should be able to, you can practice this with friends and just, see, do you understand, even not being in my industry, what I'm talking about? Minimizing achievements. Sometimes people feel like they don't want to brag, and you don't want to seem arrogant, but you do want to be confident and be proud of the amazing things that you are then going to highlight. And I said being positive, the opposite, being negative, talking about, oh, the reason I left this job was I had this horrible boss. They were the absolute worst. I couldn't wait to get away from them. This starts making them think, oh, if I was in a class with them, would they be talking behind my back? And maybe it was their fault. Was it really a bad boss, or were they doing terrible work and they just didn't want to take responsibility for that? So going on to our, oops, excuse me, sorry, kind of characters that I've created. We've got Alex first, and again, I created this with ChatGPT, so the images are completely created from there. So if there's anything bizarre, blame ChatGPT. So Alex is 28 years old and from the US, New York specifically. He graduated with a BBA from the University of Michigan in 2018. He's currently senior consultant at McKinsey, and he's been there since 2018. And then we have Priya, who's 30 years old from India, currently in London, and she actually did a BFA, so kind of coming from more of a non-traditional background. She's currently the founder and creative director of TerraWeave Design Studio, and that's been her primary work experience in addition to doing freelance work. So I'm giving you all of that background to now have some feel for them as we go into the frameworks and use some very specific examples. All right, so the first framework is, I would say, the most common. And because it's also the most common, you want to make sure you can weave in as much engaging and exciting information as you can. And in this framework, you are basically starting most often with your education, and then going on to kind of your first professional role, and then working your way through your career. And I want to also say the examples we're about to look at are not customized to any individual school. So some parts of the answers will be a little bit generic when talking about certain things at school. You want to make sure that that is highly specific to that individual program. In general, you'll hear me constantly talking about specificity in all components of the application, right? If anyone could be saying whatever you're talking about, it's probably too general. You want to be very specific to you and your experience and to the exact program that you are talking about. Your origin story, this will depend on kind of your situation, but sometimes it is powerful to even introduce this framework by, kind of what is the reason that you are pursuing the career you are, and why are you on this path? Maybe there's something that goes all the way back to childhood that has been a theme all the way through your life. So if that's the case, even with the chronological framework, you might want to kind of begin by giving them that information. You can also do this in reverse. So another approach is to begin with your most recent role and then kind of jump back. So, this is where I am today. And now let me talk a little bit about, how I got here. And so then you jump back into education and then kind of work your way forward from that point. When it is, tell me about yourself in general implies more personal information. With walk me through your resume, it obviously implies more of that kind of professional going through your life and career. That said, it does often make sense to still include some personal details, even in walk me through your resume. But when you tell me about yourself, it's really good to make sure that you are incorporating a decent amount of kind of personal points. So on to our first example, and you're not going to be able to see very well some of the full answers. At the end, I'm going to, if you message me through my Leland profile, I've prepared a document that will cover everything that we're going through today, including these full answers. So on your own time, you'll be able to read through carefully if you want and look at kind of the main points of this is kind of what this is trying to do in this paragraph, and then this is how it's actually been executed. I'm going to pick a few of these where I will read sections of it so you can get the idea of this is what they're trying to do, and this is the example of how they've done it. Here you are looking at fully written answers, and the instinct for most people in all of your interview preparation is to write complete fully written answers to all of the questions that you're anticipating. And that is not really what you want to end up with. If it helps you to start with, that's okay, but you then quickly want to switch to basically using bullet points. You are trying to avoid sounding scripted. This is one of the worst things that you can do. They can very often tell if you are just going right back into your memory and delivering this canned, highly rehearsed, word for word kind of performance. And that will really give them an immediate negative perception. So when you break it down into bullet points, you actually won't end up saying it exactly the way each time, which is great. So when you're practicing, you'll notice, and I'm going to suggest you actually record your answers. I have a whole different kind of a self-prep technique where basically you're recording your answers and then you are kind of listening to yourself and kind of critiquing. And if you do that with walk me through your resume and tell me about yourself, if you're doing it from bullet points, be happy if each time you hear it, it's a little bit different. It's even if you stumble over something, it sounds maybe even like a little bit of a mistake, but you listen to it and say, oh, okay, no, that was very human. And actually I did hit all of the key points that I was after. Then that's going to be actually a really strong answer in the end. So let me go on to the next one, which I think I will read some of this one. So let me zoom in on, this is going to be Priya, and then we'll see if you can. All right, can people read that? Let me just know in the chat, or are people able to actually read that text? Okay, awesome. Okay, so here we're starting with the chronological approach, and in this case, Priya is jumping in to that example of kind of jumping into an origin story. So, tell me about yourself. I'd love to. It all started for me at a very young age. I would see a small piece of nature and think, I want to wear that. I felt a physical pull to tape leaves to my clothes, wrap the sunset around my shoulders, and shod my feet in lush green moss. So what do people think? How does that sound to you as an introduction? put yourself in the interviewer's shoes. How do you feel about that kind of first part of the answer? You can jump in either in chat or if you want to come off the mic. Okay.
It depends on her delivery.
Mm.
We're just reading the text here, but
Right. Yeah, you're listening to me kind of, I'm obviously reading it and I'm attempting to put as much personality and feel of spontaneity into it, but obviously you can see my eyes even, kind of going through. So yes, delivery is critical here, right? So you can take the exact same thing, and if I said that in a monotone, really slow, really boring way, yes, that same, what I think is pretty engaging introduction could become really kind of boring and negative. So I like that. This is someone who really knows herself. Yes, she's really been introspective and done a lot of self-reflection, which every school is looking for you to show deep knowledge of who you are and where you're trying to go. That's really one of the most important things in the entire application process. And what I'm always teaching for interview prep in general is the best way to be prepared for any question is to have done the hard work of digging into your entire life. I mean, from childhood to today, think about every story, try and ask yourself follow-up questions. So if you know your life and know who you are, they can ask you any kind of question and many follow-up questions, and you're excited, you're ready to answer those. You're just talking about your life. So for general preparation, that's my number one tip. Just spend the time really getting to know yourself and your life. So going on to the next paragraph here. So this is going to say, some of you will know, and maybe even from working on your essays, a hook in writing. So that's what she's doing in this beginning, right? She's doing something like fishing. She's trying to grab the interviewer and really demand their attention and bring them into the story. So now going on to the next part. Luckily, I grew up in Hampi, India, in a family of artists, which instilled and supported in me a deep appreciation for creativity from a young age. This naturally led me to pursue a Bachelor of Fine Arts at the National Institute of Design in India. During my studies, I became passionate about sustainability, which I integrated into my design philosophy. I was particularly inspired by a project I worked on that involved collaborating with local artisans to create eco-friendly textiles. This experience pushed me towards sustainable fashion as a career path. So what do people think of this part of the answer? Jump in on chat or audio. Anyone? No one brave on this part? Okay. So here she's just getting into that kind of family background. She's giving that kind of briefly highlighting of what she studied, and she's connecting that to that passion, right? There's a logic to why she chose to study this. And she's picked one particular project to highlight, and then introduced how she's transitioning her career. Moving on from there, after graduating, I worked as a freelance designer for several years, primarily in India and later in London. I collaborated with small businesses, helping them develop sustainable fashion lines. But I soon realized I wanted to have more creative control and a larger impact. In 2017, I founded TerraWave Design Studio, my own sustainable fashion company. While it's been challenging to scale the business, I've built a loyal following, particularly in niche markets that value eco-friendly fashion. My role as creative director has allowed me to oversee all aspects of the business, from sourcing materials to managing a small production team. I'll go ahead and give the end and we can talk about the whole rest of the answer. Despite these achievements, I feel that I'm lacking the formal business education needed to grow the company beyond its current scale. I believe an MBA will give me the tools I need to build a more structured business model and expand TerraWeave internationally. I'm particularly drawn to this school because of its focus on sustainability and entrepreneurship, both of which align perfectly with my long-term goals of leading a global sustainable fashion brand. Okay, what if people think now of the rest of the answer and the answer as a whole? I'm just going to sip coffee for a moment while I hope we get some. Can I get anyone to jump in?
I can offer something.
Yeah, good.
As a whole, I think it's a pretty strong response. I would have switched the first two paragraphs. I would have started with, the setting first, what the structure is, and then how that shaped her interests. So she grew up in Hampi, India, and then she was exposed to a lot of nature that helped her develop. That's just one thing, but it works like this. And then I think to some extent the talking about the MBA, I think that the small business section is very strong. She's talking about having developed a loyal following. She's framing it in a positive light. She knows, she knows what is strong about it. She's recognizing some drawbacks in a sense, but not in a negative way. But then in terms of the MBA, my sense is it's a little bit too catery in a sense. It says, I believe an MBA will give me the tools I need. And that sounds like a very, very common answer. And I think for all the creativity she's had so far and getting to this point, it's clear she knows she's built her brand for her fashion line, for her clientele there. But maybe she hasn't spent enough time figuring out exactly how to approach, talking about why she's making this transition. Because I think it just, there's something that could be a little better tuned about the flow here.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yes, that's a really, really good analysis, Alexander, and I very much appreciate it. Yes, what you're definitely going to find as you work on your own answers is there are lots of different ways, even within these different frameworks, that you can make choices. And the way that you were proposing switching the organization, absolutely, you should play around with that. As far as the ending and like not being fully clear, and that this is designed to be more generic, as I said. So when you see those parts that are quite general, you are meant to be really specific. So here it's saying, because of your focus on sustainability and entrepreneurship, okay, that's great. But when you're talking about a specific school, you are really going to be talking about something specific to that school. Maybe that school has a unique center that is entirely focused on sustainability that is only at that school. So in your individual answer, you should really personalize it. So keep that in mind with some of the parts of these answers where I'm just letting it stay generic in this case. So you can kind of imagine yourself taking over this answer and refining it to be perfect for you. And also, I'll say to make it easy for our examples here, ChatGPT has written these, so we would even go back and pick these apart if we were really trying to say, okay, this is going to be a person's real final answer. So feel free to pick them apart. You're absolutely not going to be upsetting me in any way. Any other thoughts or questions for before we go on from here?
Hello, I don't know if you can hear me.
You can, yeah.
I think I roughly agree with what's been said before. I just felt like the fishing sort of like seemed interesting because it didn't resonate with me as much. And I think it might be because it feels very much more like what I would write in an essay as opposed to what I would talk about in terms of like my interest. So perhaps like talking about the same thing, but like in a different way that made it sound a bit more, I don't know, like I've always, been, I don't know, maybe like something that felt a bit more like a concrete example of maybe how, when she was younger, she sort of like was super into arts and crafts or whatever it may be, because it feels like something that anyone could say, really. So it didn't feel like it added much to the story, and it didn't really hook me that much. And I completely agree with a comment made before about how actually it would have made more sense to talk about her origin story by talking about her background a little bit, and then providing that example straight after, and then sort of like tying it nicely into, this is why I decided to go for art. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Like you're saying, I absolutely agree that these are not at all perfected, but they give you the idea of the way you can kind of go through the answer. So let's go on to the next framework. Whoops, sorry, let me zoom out here. Excuse me one sec. Okay, there we go. So the next one is the kind of thematic framework. And this really is what it sounds like. This is focusing from the beginning on, one, I would say maximum 3 kind of key themes that really run through your life and bring you to where you are today, and logically make sense for where you're now trying to kind of progress to. So with this, if you have that kind of singular theme as maybe Priya does, then you can spend more time on developing as the other 2 comments there, right? You might get really hyper specific and give some really unique examples that are supporting that theme, and how it has impacted your life and your career, and why it makes sense to explain your various choices in your life, from your education to your career to now choosing to go for an MBA. So let's go on to an example from this. And in this case, let's jump into Alex's, and we'll do this on Tell Me About Yourself too. And next one we'll go into, well, let's see, I'm looking at time. All right. We'll just do a bit of this. Okay. Growing up in Detroit, many people around me identified deep-rooted community issues, but felt powerless to enact change. This inspired a passion for problem-solving early on, which led me to pursue a degree in business administration at University of Michigan. My journey can be summed up by 3 themes: leadership, strategic thinking, and a passion for healthcare transformation. All right, so I won't read through everything. You have an idea of him from the introduction. So there you can see right in the beginning, he's going ahead and introducing, he's going to be talking about these 3 different themes. And then as you start to look, you can see that he's going to go through each of those and how it has specifically connected to his story, right? So how did the theme connect to his undergraduate, to his studies? Use some specific examples there. Then getting into the next theme, what makes it unique? How is this highlighting something important in his career? And then going through the ending themes, finally by getting to linking everything together in the end and connecting with his goals. So let's just go in on that part. So even again here, like I said, this is going to be a little bit generic. So again, keep that in mind as you would personalize it. Now I'm seeking to an MBA to evolve these themes and take them to the next level. Such and such schools focus on healthcare management and leadership development aligns perfectly with my goals of leading transformative change in healthcare organizations. The program's experiential learning opportunities will allow me to continue building on my leadership and strategic skills while focusing on the healthcare sector. So again, you would fill a lot of those things in that are fairly generic with highly personalized to your story and to the school that you are applying to. Any other questions or thoughts before we go on? Sorry. Sorry, it's jumping on me. Oh, okay. Okay, nothing more there.
I have a question actually
Sure.
about the thematic framework. Do you feel like maybe having a structure like that can sometimes deter or be like a deterrence or like a disadvantage because it might come off as too scripted maybe and like memorized?
Well, yeah, it's got to be, again, as I think maybe Alexander was mentioning before. I'm sorry if it wasn't you, Alexander, talking about the delivery, right? So yes, if you choose the wrong content and you deliver it in a way that sounds really artificial, then yes, it could come off that way if it's poorly done. But when it truly makes sense for your storyline, and each kind of move in the story makes sense and allows the interviewer to get that more personal connection to you and an understanding of your life, then it's not cliche or trying to be or like saying artificial. It's just saying, hey, this is what has been driving me, and this is how it's impacted me. And you are then going to highlight the specific things in each of those steps. So this might be the theme, but in the career point, you are also going to include specific achievement or things that you learned from that role. So when you're looking at this, it's not going to like just be, I'm saying this, you're going to weave in all of these unique details to your story. Does that sound, does that kind of answer that question and show you how, yes, if it's done badly, it can go wrong, but when done well, it's can be really engaging?
Definitely. Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, so let me jump to the next one, looking at time here. Okay. We're talking about kind of the self-development framework. This is where this is particularly good for people who have had a lot of kind of redirections in their life. They started with one interest, they went to college for that, realized halfway through, oh no, I'm really not into that. So they changed their major, went to something else, went out into the professional world, got their first job, didn't really work for them or whatever the reason was, and moved to something else. So in this kind of situation, on paper, it could look somewhat negative to some people, right? It looks like this person has no focus, and what's the point of what are they trying to do? What are their goals? And this is a good way of bringing all of those things together, of how, even though they seem disparate, each of these periods in your life had some importance where you learned key things. There are points from each of these things that have helped you develop further. So you've just gotten better and better and better. And these are the skills you've acquired along the way. These are the realizations you've had. And this is then kind of how you end up where we are today. So any questions about this one? I'm not, with some of the others, I'm going to try not to go all the way through the details. Like I said, if you message me after, I'll send you the document so you can really see everything in full context and take your time. But I don't want to bore you reading through more of these, and I want to make sure we have time for Q&A and that kind of thing.
I guess like I do have a question around whether this is the right approach, because I'm one of those people who have done like loads of different things, but just like there's like logic to the madness, I guess. But at the same time, is it only about sort of identifying those key points, or like can you highlight here? Is it only about the skills, or is it about learning about certain things that have allowed you to decide this is the path that I want to go? Because like I think I could potentially highlight skills, but I don't want to just be skills based, and there's still elements of some of the other frameworks that might work best for me. So would love to sort of just hear what your thoughts are on that one.
Yeah, that's a part of the last thing you mentioned, I think, is also another important point that, we're kind of presenting these as unified frameworks, but there's absolutely no reason that you can't kind of, mix and match a bit. In the end, the goal is for you to figure out what approach, what way of organizing your answer is best for you, right? What is the way that you are able to communicate the most effectively with the greatest impact, your background, who you are, and why you are here talking to the interviewer today. So yeah, it could be this kind of jumbled career, but at the same time, in the end, you might say, you know what, I thought these were all disconnected when I was going through this, but what I realized is I actually had a client recently like this. So I had a client where they were all over the place in the education, and then they were like in 3 different industries to this point. But what we discovered was at each of these points, one thing that they had always come back to was trying to find opportunities to help make their company or the university or whatever more sustainable in some way. They had always, of their own accord, created different initiatives, looked for opportunities in whatever role they were in to make the kind of biggest impact they could in those ways. And so that's an example where you might, that kind of becomes a theme, right? Although everything is disparate. So in their answer, they were kind of using this mix where they were explaining how it kind of developed through their career. And they didn't really hammer on the sustainability part until kind of their ending, where they were then saying, on the face of it, it really seemed like I've been all over the place, but now I've realized that this has been the kind of guiding light through all of that. And that's why I'm here and why I want to, move on in this direction. And I now, kind of really have discovered, who I am, what my passion is, and what I want to do in the world. Does that help answer?
Yeah, no, that's super helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, and like I said, when you're looking at this in the document, like I said, I'm giving kind of highlights here where he starts with the background and what was that first moment, then why did you kind of transition to the next? So in seeing the examples, it will make even more sense when you're really, kind of sitting there going through it. But like I said, I don't want to bore everyone with reading through all of these answers. Any other questions as I kind of move along? Okay, on to, I think it was the last one I have here, professional and personal framework. This one in particular is excellent if you're getting tell me about yourself, which, as I said, does tend to imply a little bit more personal information. So in this case, you may do somewhat of a mix and match of the others that we've talked about. So you might get into a kind of core theme, then talking about, okay, professionally, these are the things that I've done, and on the personal side, these are the things. But you want to make sure that everything is tied together in some way. You're not trying to just pick, oh, this is my 3 personal things and this is my 3 professional things. You want to think about who you are, what you're trying to present, and making sure that these things are connected in some logical way. And let's see. Okay, so in this case, talking about Priya, which you remember some of her life story. So with each of these, you're seeing, you're just kind of reformatting and choosing to use different information, while the heart of the story is still the same person, right? So in this case, she's beginning with those 2 passions. She then gets into, how that has, influenced her career, talking about some notable contribution, and then transitioning over to the kind of things that she's brought and passions in her personal pursuits, and then kind of bringing it all together in the end of how it again aligns with her goals and how it links to the school. So any questions there before we go on to general Q&A? Sorry to have to go a little bit fast through some of these. I'd love to spend more time, but given the time parameters. All right, let's jump to general Q&A then. So feel free to jump in on audio or in the chat, whatever's more comfortable for you.
Jesse, I'd love to ask a more general question. Typically when we've got these, tell me about yourself or walk me through your resume, it's a fairly large 4 to 5 paragraph chunk of talking. How do you make sure that people stay engaged and that you don't also feel like you've taken 5 to 6 minutes? And how do you manage the length of time on this? Like, do you just talk really fast?
No. Good, very, very good question. As far as length, I generally like around 2 to 3 minutes. You a little bit longer is okay. A little bit shorter, maybe it makes sense. It's unusual, I think, for less than 2 minutes to make sense. On average, going beyond 5 minutes, I think, is a pretty decent cutoff where you're probably starting to go too long. So you want to just really refine your answer so that you make sure it's as concise as possible. Look for areas where maybe you're repeating information, or what can you cut, what is less necessary. You absolutely don't want to get the sense that you are trying to just rush through to give the interviewer all of this information because you think it's so wonderful. No, you want it to be authentic. You want it to be really you. And again, when you break it down into the bullet points, it becomes much easier. You say, okay, these are the main things that I want to make sure I hit. And I have an overall kind of order that I'm intending to go through. That really allows you to be much more in the moment, right? Throughout the interview, you want to be right there with the interviewer. A top tip as well is listen carefully to the question and don't try and force your what you want to say, the story you want to tell, into some question. Make sure you are clearly answering the question that you are asked. So in this case, you just need to come up with that kind of overall structure, practice it a lot, and you'll quickly kind of find that each time you deliver it, you can be in the moment because you're just thinking, oh, this is the point I want to get across now, and you just start talking. And some phrases you're going to repeat lots of things, but each time it will come out a little bit differently. And you should practice this with friends, with colleagues. You can work with a professional like me, get their impression. Ask how did they feel, and they will immediately tell you, you sounded completely like it was memorized, it was canned, it was boring, it wasn't really you, the you that I know. Does that answer that question?
It does. Thank you.
Oh, I see. Okay. Do I have any advice for, if the first question, any updates in your job or resume since you applied? I think, do you have an MIT interview coming up, Denny? Yeah, that's my guess. I know that's a pretty standard question in the MIT interviews. Yeah, this is can be a great part of the answer. It can be something that you might choose to work into your, even if it's not MIT, tell me about yourself and walk me through your resume. But MIT does often ask exactly that question. So in that case, again, answer the question. It's not so much about what did you want to say and walk me through your resume or tell me about yourself. That's a different question. They're not asking you tell me about yourself, except for they're saying a very specific period of time. And that's another important thing to understand is when you are answering this, even though you're prepared, a lot of the time you will get to deliver your whole answer, but other times you will get interrupted and you will answer a follow-up and you won't get to say all of the things that you kind of had planned, and the interview will just kind of start going from there. So, or they will say to you, tell me about yourself, but I only want to hear about your professional career. And you have to, again, this is what they've asked for. Even though you wanted to say these other things, you need to drop the things that don't properly answer the question and do that. So with any updates in your resume since you applied, you should think about what has happened since then and what can you share with them that they would find the most interesting and that would continue to support your application. Denny, does that answer that question or any follow-up on that? Okay, Alexander, let me let you speak. So you raised your hand. Go for it.
So my question is about reactions to questions. When someone asks you a question, what are your thoughts on taking a moment to pause and thinking through how you're going to structure it, or asking a clarifying question, or things like saying, that's a great question, or at the end of your response, asking, does that answer your question? How do you think these things affect, everything, and any tips on these things?
Yeah, excellent question. And that kind of, I think that relates to these two questions, but even more so to subsequent questions that you're going to get in the interview, right? You may get some questions that completely surprise you. And especially in that circumstance, it's completely reasonable to pause and even to say, wow, that's a really excellent question that I hadn't thought of that part of my life in that exact way, or whatever they're asking about. And, buy yourself a little bit of time to think, even if you need to say, would you mind if I took, 30 seconds to kind of think this through? That's fine. You don't want, if you're doing that all the time, then obviously that's a problem. But if something like that happens once or twice, it's completely human. And actually that can become potentially a great moment in the interview, because they realize, I got this, this person was totally unexpected. So what I'm getting right now is fully in the moment, even though you might be going to things that you have kind of prepared for, and you're now able to get into a kind of good structured answer because you realize, oh, they're asking about this, and this is a great story that I can kind of build around this question. With regard to these first questions, yeah, pausing, whatever feels natural to you, if the interviewer gets the sense that you are trying to answer, tell me about yourself or walk me through your resume completely in the moment, that doesn't make any sense, right? That's just going to be confusing to them, and they're immediately going to think you didn't do any preparation. I'm asking you, everyone knows this question is coming, and you start stumbling and going, well, I went to college. I mean, I got educated, and then I had my first job, and whatever. You're just kind of thinking out loud. So subsequent questions, yes. As part of your delivery in this, absolutely, you're kind of going through and you're kind of pausing and saying, that was a really critical moment in my life. And, I really faced this unbelievable choice. And I honestly, I didn't know what to do with myself for a while. And you kind of just a little pause. You don't have to deliver answers in a completely, I'm just kind of trying to read through them to get them, the idea out to you, right? But in your delivery, be there in the moment. When there's emotions, positive and negative, let yourself kind of go up and down with that. I know we're running out of time, and I wish I could answer tons more questions, but let me, if you have other questions, do message me offline, and I'll be happy to discuss that. And let me get to a little bit more information. One sec. Okay, so before you go, and I'm about to announce who's the winner of the free interview prep session with me. And before that, like I said, after the session, if you can message me, I put the link to my profile in the chat. And if you just go there and send me a message, I'll be happy to send you a PDF that has all of the details from today. Also 10% off coupon. And if you want to schedule an intro, I'd be happy to discuss possibly working together. Also, I have already posted my next event, which is going to be on the some of the other massive, most common questions of, and most important actually, why an MBA, why now, and why this school. So basically a little over a month from now I'm going to be doing that event. So go ahead and use the link in the chat to register for that. I hope I'll be able to see many of you at that next event. I'd love to hear from everyone. What are your thoughts? How have you liked this session? Any feedback? I work really hard on trying to present the best information I can for you and make it as useful as possible. I'm trying to do a lot of unique topics on Leland. So how does everyone feel about today, and any comments either in the chat or off mute? All right, great. Glad it was helpful. Okay, well, let me go on to picking the winner. And the way I did this today was asked ChatGPT for 2 letters, and I was going to then match the closest initials to that. And that is going to be EA. Who is EA? I'm now trying to look and see what let me jump back to the chat. Whoever it is with the initials EA, can you? Yeah, all right. All right, so Ibuka, all right, excellent. I'm sorry, I hope I pronounced your name right. So Ibuka, please message me and I'll be happy to schedule that. I'm really looking forward to it. So with that, everyone, thank you so much. And it's really great if after the event, if you found this helpful, it will ask you to give a thumbs up and then give you the opportunity to give a rating and leave a comment. So it's extremely helpful to me if you can leave a 5-star review, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you got from today and any other comments. So thanks again, everyone. I hope to see you in my next event and talk to you offline. So thanks so much.